okay? It's the normal VBS registration link. You can, there's a student volunteer bubble, right? Just click that button, and you can go right to there. Also, we had some baptisms this past Sunday. I saw a number of you guys there. Sibling was there. We had some friends here. That was awesome. It's one of my favorite times to do baptism. One, just because it's totally different, and it's super close. Like, if you're at the beach, you can't even hear who's being baptized. If you're at the river, it's a little closer, which we've only done that once. And then, of course, like in our baptistry, like it's still there, but it's still like the person way up in the little hidey hole, right, in the back. And, like, I just love the stock tank baptism because it's, like, right there, right? Nice and close. I love it. All right, so hope you had a great experience. Easter was awesome. Let's dive back into Sojourners and Strangers. This is our week 3 of 2 Peter, and we only have 2 more. We have 2 more. That's nuts, I know. We've been working in this week. I literally looked at my page number. I have written 81 pages for just this sermon series, which is really beastly that I would do this. It has been a really good series. We started in 1 Peter, right? That was kind of before spring break. And the main theme of 1 Peter is that we are in this world, but we don't really belong to it, right? We're sojourners or pilgrims, exiles even is what Pastor Heath is using, that we're from here, but we're not from here. Like, I'm like many of you guys. I actually grew up in Northeast Florida. I just grew up an hour down the road, okay? And so this is kind of home for me. And to see how much this area has changed even, because this place was the country when I was growing up. I mean the country. There were dirt roads in Fruit Cove, y'all, okay? Like, they didn't even pave it. They didn't even bother. It wasn't important. Okay, so, like, things have changed. And so it feels a little different. It feels a little different even in my community whenever I tell my neighbors, where are you from? They're like, this one's from another state. This one's from, like, New England area. This one's from another country, right? And they're like, where are you from? I'm like, Florida. Like, born, raised here. Parents were born and raised in Florida. Their parents were born and raised in Florida. Like, it's just Florida, right? And so it's weird, though, because this culture, especially America, feels like it's becoming something I recognize less and less. Maybe that's just my old man, Grandpa Jason moment for the night. I don't know, but like this culture seems to be changing. Grandpa Jason was for my daughter and the people who went to World Changers, so now you know. Okay, so Christian has been our travel companion. Okay, we've been going through the Pilgrim's Progress, and he has been kind of our anchor point through this journey. Okay, and so tonight we're going to see him really we're coming to the end of his journey. He's almost to Beulah land and the celestial city, or the land of God, God's country even. After spring break, we jumped into 2 Peter, which is going to be where we're at tonight. So go ahead and pull out your index, find 2 Peter, and let's turn there now. Okay, 2 Peter is a testament, okay? So, and the funny thing is, it's by Peter, the same author as 1 Peter, to the very same people that Peter was writing to in the first letter. We really don't have a ton of letters like that. There's 1st and 2nd Corinthians, where the same guy, Paul, wrote to the same group of people, right? And there's Thessalonians is similar, but like that's really about it. Like, for the most part, we don't see multiple letters from one guy to the same amount of people. And this testament is because, like, Peter knows he's about to die, right? We've been talking about this. He's in jail. He was in jail in the first book. He's still in the same jail. And is getting really close to the end, and he kind of knows that it's getting really close to the end, and he also knows how it's going to end. And so he writes this testament, sort of like this last words of the Apostle Peter, and that's what we're reading. And the first part is about pursuing after God, pursuing after truth, pursuing after what is right. And the second part, which is what we start next week in chapter 3, is that which is to come. The hope that we have set before our eyes. That's the next week. Now today, we're going to introduce to you a new character. Not really. If you've been reading along in the story of the Pilgrim's Progress, there's this guy, and he's kind of been lurking in the background, but I have intentionally skipped him until tonight. Because his story is really going to help us see what we're looking at. This character's name is Ignorance. Ignorance first appeared in chapter 10, right after Christian and Hopeful spend some time with the shepherds on the mountains. I skipped him because he's really going to come into play this week, and you're going to see him again in 2 weeks. Okay? Christian and Hopeful, they meet this guy. His name is Ignorance. Ignorance claims to be a true believer, just like them. He comes from the land of conceit. I find that fun, okay? Conceit and ignorance go together. He argues and debates with Christian and Hopeful a lot, right? Like, it's pretty much like you see like Christian and Hopeful, they're walking and they're having a great time, and here comes Ignorance, and all of a sudden an argument starts. And he doesn't really get along with them very well, so he disappears for a time. And then he comes back, and they have more arguments and debates, and then he disappears for a time. And he comes back, and every time that he's there, Ignorance really just wants to talk about ignorance himself. You know that? You have that friend? You know what I'm talking about? The friend who likes to talk about themselves and like nobody else. And somehow they can find a way to turn every conversation back towards themselves. That's ignorance. That's what he does, right? Now, something interesting, again, we're following the story from John Bunyan and how he's writing. And again, he's being really honest. Okay, so if you remember, Christian is from the city of destruction. That's where he started. Now, his original name was Graceless. But when he is renewed and he puts his faith in God, he gets the name Christian. Hopeful, we don't know his original name, but he came from Vanity Fair. And he watched Faithful be martyred for his faith, and that caused him to trust in God. And so he leaves his homeland behind and gets a new name. Ignorance leaves his homeland behind, but does not get a new name. Still got the same name. That's Bunyan just being like, I'm just going to slide this in there for you guys. Little note for you guys to start picking up on. Okay, so we're going to read a section. If you've got your book and you're following along with me, I'm starting on page 198. I think is where it's at. Yeah, ignorance follows his heart. That sounds straight up out of Disney, doesn't it? Yep. All right, so as they continued walking, Hopeful looked back and saw Ignorance. There he is again. It's going to show up again. Whom they had left earlier, following them. Look how far that young man has fallen behind, Hopeful said, pointing back at Ignorance. Oh, yes, I see him, said Christian, looking out into the distance. He doesn't care much for our company. I know, said Hopeful, slowing his pace, but it wouldn't have hurt him if he had decided to walk with us to this point. Christian smiled. That's true, but I'm certain he thinks otherwise. I'm sure he does, said Hopeful, smiling back. However, let's wait for him. As they slowed down, Christian called out to Ignorance, hurry up, man. Why are you lagging so far behind? Ignorance glanced up at the two pilgrims in front of him and replied bluntly, I enjoy walking alone rather than in a group. That is, unless I like those in the group. Like, that's shade right there. Like, I like walking by myself unless I'm in a group, but only if I like those in the group. In other words, like, I don't like you. Like, that's pretty hard. All right, okay. Christian glanced over at Hopeful with eyebrow raised, I'm sure. See, I told you that he doesn't care for our company. He then yelled back to Ignorance, catch up, and we'll spend some time talking together in this peaceful place. As soon as Ignorance caught up to them, Christian said, tell us how you're going and how your relationship is between God and your soul since we last spoke. I hope all is well, said Ignorance, shrugging his shoulders. I always fill my mind with good thoughts that comfort me as I walk along the way. Christian was curious. Please tell us more about these good thoughts. Why, I think about God and heaven, he replied confidently. Christian furrowed his forehead and countered, so do the demons and every soul that is destined for hell. Ignorance smiled at Christian's response. Yes, but I think about them and also desire them. So do many others that will likely never go to heaven. It's like the proverb says, the slacker craves but has nothing. Perhaps, he replied, but I think about them and I have left everything for them. I doubt that very much, said Christian, because to leave everything is much more difficult than most people understand. What evidence has convinced you that you've left everything for God in heaven? Ignorance placed his hand on his chest and said, "My heart tells me so." The wise man said to those who trust in their own hearts are fools. Christian replied. Ignorance waved him off. That saying is referring to an evil heart, but mine is a good one. We're going to pick this story up in a second. But did you hear that? You've got these two guys, and they're both talking about following the way, following after God, and they're both using the same language. They're both using the same words. They both think they're going to the same place. One is and one isn't. These days, everybody has their own version of truth, right? You've got your truth, I've got my truth, you do you, I do me, and we just kind of leave each other alone. See, the problem with that is there's only one true gospel. There's only one true way, and it's through Jesus Christ. There is no other way. In 2 Peter 2, we're going to read about false teachers. A false teacher is someone who comes to the church and appears very similar to everyone else, but they lead people away from Christ. How do we identify these people? How do we know how to avoid them? Peter's going to give us 3 clear markers in chapter 2. We're going to get there. He's also going to tell us what the judgment is, or the cost of following them. So I want to say, okay, how can we discern who is a false teacher so that we can avoid their teachings? Okay, so let's jump in. 2 Peter 2, we're going to read all 22 verses. It's going to be quite a bit, and it ends with one of my favorite verses of all time. Ready? There were indeed false prophets among the people, just as there will be false teachers among you. They will bring in destructive heresies, even denying the master who brought them, and will bring swift destruction on themselves. Many will follow their depraved ways, and the way of truth will be maligned because of them. They will exploit you in their greed with made-up stories. Their condemnation, pronounced long ago, is not idle, and their destruction does not sleep. For God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them into hell, and delivered them in chains of utter darkness to be kept for judgment. And if he did not spare the ancient world, but protected Noah, a preacher of righteousness, and 7 others, when he brought the flood on the world of the ungodly, pause for a second at the beginning of verse 6. I just want to notice that there are 2 biblical stories from the Old Testament that Peter is verifying as true. Okay, keep going. And if he reduced the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, 3, to ashes and condemned them to extinction, making them an example of what is coming to the ungodly. And if he rescued righteous Lot, 4, distressed by the depraved behavior of the immoral, for as that righteous man lived among them day by day, his righteous soul was tormented by the lawless deeds he saw and heard. Then the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from trials and to keep the unrighteous under punishment for the day of judgment, especially those who follow the polluting desires of the flesh and despise authority. Bold, arrogant people. If you're underlining right there, bold, arrogant people. They are not afraid to slander the glorious ones. However, angels who are greater and mightier in power do not bring a slanderous charge against them before the Lord. But these people, like irrational animals, creatures of instinct, born to be caught and destroyed, slander what they do not understand, and in their destruction, they too will be destroyed. Verse 13. They will be paid back with harm for the harm they have done. They consider it a pleasure to carouse in broad daylight. They are spots and blemishes, delighting in their deceptions while they feast with you. They have eyes full of adultery that never stop looking for sin. They seduce unstable people, and they have hearts trained in greed. I like that word, that wording right there. Hearts trained in greed. I don't even just think about that you have gone after something so much that you have trained your heart to pursue greed.